Hi, I'm your host, Christopher Garcia, and this is my assistant to the host, Natalie Lopez. And today,
Co-host. I am the co-host.
assistant to the host, Natalie Lopez, and this is the Spanish Inquisition in a nutshell. Today, we're going to be learning about... No, not Germany.
We're going to be learning about Spain and the Spanish Inquisition.
To begin, the word Inquisition has its roots in the Latin word inquisito, which means inquirer.
The Romans used this inquisitorial process as a form of legal proceedings in which they searched for evidence. After Rome's religion switched to Christianity under Constantine, they kept the inquisitorial trial method, but also created brutal ways of dealing with heretics who went against the new religion.
Religious freedom was an accepted way of life until the establishment of the Office of Inquisition in the Middle Ages, founded in response to the growing Catharist heresy in southwest France. The Spanish Inquisition, set up in 1478, was larger than all inquisitorial activity that had happened before it, in terms of its reach and length. For 350 years, under papal decree, Jews, then Muslims, and Protestants were put through the Inquisitional court and condemned to torture, imprisonment, exile, and death. In order to get a good understanding of what the Spanish Inquisition is and how it affected Europe, we must understand the history that occurred before.
Before the Spanish Inquisition ever began, we must acknowledge how Aragon and Castile were united.
This union was all in part to the marriage of Isabella and Ferdinand II.
The whole reason behind the marriage of Isabella and Ferdinand was to unite all Spain under one monarchy, which managed the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government.
But through its unification, this meant that all of Spain had the opportunity to be completely unified, and Isabella and Ferdinand saw it necessary to control all of Spain under one Orthodox religion, Catholicism.
In the late 15th century, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella believed corruption in the Spanish Catholic Church was caused by conversos, or Jews who converted to Christianity to survive. Conversos were, for some reason, accused of poisoning people's water and abducting Christian boys.
The king and queen feared that the conversos were practicing their old religion, and they were also afraid of angering Christian subjects who demanded a harder line against the conversos. Ferdinand felt an inquisition was the best way to fund the crusade, which meant seizing the wealth of heretic conversos.
Hearing the complaints of conversos who had fled to Rome, Pope Sixtus proclaimed the Spanish Inquisition was too harsh and was wrongly accusing conversos. In 1482, Sixtus appointed a council to address the issue. This did not mean that the Spanish sovereigns were turning over the church for the struggle for unity.
In fact, they sought to use the Inquisition to support their absolute and centralizing regime, and most especially to increase the royal power in Aragon. Around 1483, the Pope was induced to authorize the naming by the Spanish government of a Grand Inquisitor for Castile.
Torquemada was named Inquisitor General and established courts across Spain. Torture soon became a routine used to release confessions from the people.
The Grand Inquisitor acted as the head of the Inquisition in Spain. The ecclesiastical jurisdiction that he had received from the Vatican empowered him to name deputies and hear appeals. In deciding appeals, the Grand Inquisitor was assisted by a council of 5 members and consultors.
All those offices were filled by agreement between the government and the Grand Inquisitor. The council, especially after its reorganization during the reign of Philip II, put the effective control of the institution more and more into the hands of the civil power.
After the papacy of Clement VII, priests and bishops were at the times judged by the Inquisition. In procedure, the Spanish Inquisition was much like the medieval Inquisition.
The first Grand Inquisitor, Torquemada, used torture and confiscation to terrorize his victims, and his methods were the product of a time when judicial procedure was cruel by design. The sentencing of the accused took place at the act of faith, an elaborate public expression of the Inquisition's power.
The condemned were presented before a large crowd that often included royalty, and the proceedings had a ritualized, almost festive quality. The number of burnings at the stake during Torquemada's tenure was exaggerated by protesting critics of the Inquisition, but is generally estimated to have been about 2,000.
As Spain expanded into the Americas, so did the Inquisition, established in Mexico in 1570. In 1574, Lutherans were burned at the stake there, and the Inquisition came to Peru, where Protestants were likewise tortured and burned alive.
In the year 1580, Spain conquered Portugal and began rounding up and slaughtering Jews that had fled Spain. Philip II also renewed hostilities against the Moors, who revolted and found themselves either killed or sold into slavery.
Philip II died in 1598, and his son, Philip III, dealt with the Muslim uprising by banishing them. From 1609 to 1615, 150,000 Muslims who had converted to Catholicism were forced out of Spain.
One question commonly asked about the Spanish Inquisition is, how did this affect Native Americans who were located on the other side of the globe?
Well, to begin, it really didn't. Although the time period from which the Inquisition began to when it ended Spain was very much involved in the Americas, Native Americans were sort of exempt in a way.
Yes, the Spanish crown legitimately saw natives as exempt from the Inquisition. Why? Because they were deemed too childish to understand Christianity.
Well, I mean, these natives did just get introduced by a people they had never even heard of before, who were way more technology advanced and were basically enslaved by them.
That's correct, and that's exactly why they were not held accountable by the Spanish. In fact, further upon that, in Spanish law, natives were legally seen as minors who could not actively make decisions for themselves.
Well, I'm sure they would have appreciated some child labor laws back then, now wouldn't they? Another topic I think we should discuss is Roman Inquisition. It's not a big part of the history with the Spanish, but I think people should know how the Roman Inquisition got involved in this mess.
Well, not necessarily involved, more like honorably mentioned.
Yeah, okay.
Rome renewed its Inquisition in 1542, which was around the same time where the Spanish Inquisition was taking place. And this was when Pope Paul III created the Supreme Sacred Congregation of the Roman and Universal Inquisition to combat Protestant heresy. This Inquisition is best known for putting Galileo on trial in 1633.
In 1545, the Spanish Index was created, a list of European books considered heretical and forbidden in Spain based on the Roman Inquisition's own index, the Brorum Prohibitorum. In addition to Rome's concerns, the Spanish Inquisition focused on the rising population of Spanish Protestants in the 1550s.
In 1556, Philip II ascended to the throne. He had previously brought the Roman Inquisition to the Netherlands, where Lutherans were actually hunted down and burned at the stake.
Hey kid, what's your name?
Joe.
It's about time, Natalie. This is Joe.
So Joe, tell us, how old are you?
7.
Perfect, so you know all about the Spanish Inquisition, right?
Of course, it is when the Spanish monarchs instituted a new organization in coordination with this church to persecute Jews, Muslims, and Protestants within Spain in order to make the country more pure.
Wow, you really know it all, don't you? What's a quadratic formula?
Negative b plus or minus
No,
square
okay,
root.
okay, shut up.
Well, you forgot one crucial thing. The Spanish Inquisition lasted from 1478 to 1834.
Yeah, you thought you knew it all, little punk.
Yeah, get out of here. Get out of here. Ma'am, may I have a second of your time, please?
Oh, okay.
Thank you, much appreciated. What's your name?
Olga.
Oh, okay, Olga. Have you heard about the Spanish Inquisition? It's all the teenagers are talking about these days.
Of course I've heard about the Spanish Inquisition. It's when the people in San Antonio had to defend the Alamo.
No, that's not it. The Spanish Inquisition happened in Spain in the 1400s and 1800s.
What is a Spain?
It's a country in Europe.
You mean Russia?
No, Russia's in Europe, but Spain is also in Europe.
Russia's the only country, or the one that matters.
Of course, but you're right, the Spanish Inquisition. People died.
Is it happening right now?
No, it happened.
Then it does not matter.
Okay, thank you for your time.
До свидания.
Of course.
Testing, Chris?
Say hi, Alex.
Hello, Chris.
Natalie?
I'm not saying that.
You gotta say hi. Come on, that's going in the bloopers. This is the production.
How old are you?
I'm 7 years old.
You're 7 years old.
Why'd you have to look down at your phone and...
Is it happening right now? Then it does not.
It's a photo.
Is it a photo?
No.
Here. That's fine, Barry. We'll cut that out.
Oh my god!
Natalie, faster!
Stop, don't film me.
With the state to persecute.
It's fine.
Chris. Wait, you printed the same thing 3 times?
Did it make the beat?
Yeah.
Hello, guys. Ma'am. May I have a second of your time?
Oh, okay.
Thank you, much.
And here we see Natalie in her natural habitat.
My natural habitat is working on my projects.
Well, thank you. What's your name?
Of course I've heard about the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.